DFS. Welcome into week 15 of one of the most accurate DFS shows in the industry. This is the Adjusted Line Play Report presented by Zilla Fantasy Elite. I am your host, Todd Hoffman. You can find myself over on Twitter at ToddZilla1337. You can find Zilla Fantasy Elite over on Twitter at Zilla Fantasy. Today's show is powered by Rain Total Body Fuel. Looking to make it rain some cash in DFS? If so, tune in to the Adjusted Line Play Report from Zilla Fantasy Elite and follow host Todd Hoffman while he delivers the most accurate DFS advice in the industry and make it rain. All right, folks, today's flavor, cherry limeade. Let's get after it. Let's get after some of this cherry limeade, huh? A little bit of carbonation there. All right, that's good stuff right there. All right. Again, powered by Rain Total Body Fuel. If you're looking to make it rain some cash in DFS, tune in to this Adjusted Line Play Report. We are now 11 of 14 weeks with a positive return on investment. So let's say you put in $1 worth of fees, we're getting more than $1 back. 11 out of 14 weeks now. Just absolutely smashing it. 3 weeks where we didn't make money, and all of those were less or within 25% of the entry fees that we put in. So, put in $1, you're getting at least 75 cents back. Some of those is like 9 cents overall. So one of those 3 weeks was only 9 cents overall. Again, absolutely crushing it this year. And it's all because of this Adjusted Line Play Report. A little bit of a unique slate this week. We have 3 Saturday games. So you can kind of think of it as a Thanksgiving Day slate. We'll go into those Saturday games here, get you that info, and then head into the main slate and get into those 10 games on the main slate, and then hit the island games that will be on Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football. Getting into that Saturday slate, we're going to go with the number 1 ranked game on the slate, which is Indianapolis at Minnesota. And this is, again, the number 1 on the Saturday slate. Minnesota 3.5 point home favorites, 47.5 game total there from Vegas. Getting into the Indianapolis side, they're 25 and 31st in the offensive pass protection categories. Minnesota 18 and 14. That's an advantage for Minnesota, although they haven't been so great in the pass department, as we all know. Like the last seven of the last 8 weeks, they've given up over 300 yards passing, like 400 yards on offense. 7 of the last 8 weeks there. So Indianapolis may be fine in this, despite what this is kind of showing. They are 25th in the offensive pass protection, which isn't very good. They might find themselves with a little bit of extra time to throw against this Minnesota pass rush. Could be out Danielle Hunter. He's got some neck issues again, and he just missed all of last year with a similar issue. So keep that on your radar. If he's not there, it's going to be one less player on defense. They do have some guys coming back in the safety area there that could really affect things in the pass game department. Maybe they'll shut it down a little bit, but I wouldn't expect the Indianapolis pass game to be super great in this, but that's probably going to be how they move the ball, considering the run blocking. They're 29 and 31st. Minnesota's 9th and 25th in the run DVOA. So that's a big advantage for Minnesota's defensive line there against the run. Wouldn't expect JT to be particularly efficient or effective in this particular matchup. I think Indianapolis is going to have to move the ball via the air. It's going to be more of a Michael Pittman, Paris Campbell week. And then, JT may get his volume. I just don't expect him to be super effective unless he's breaking off a big 60, 70 yarder. I don't expect him to have a very effective week this week for fantasy. But you got to start him in your seasonal leagues. I'm just going to avoid him in the DFS slate on Saturdays. So Minnesota's offense, number 11 and 21 in the offensive pass protection categories. Indianapolis 10 and 15. That's pretty much a stalemate there. Minnesota kind of holding steady, even despite some injuries there along their offensive line. I think this is going to be a good game for Justin Jefferson, as is always pretty much every single game, but this is more of like a studs eat. There's not going to be an extended amount of time. It's not going to be a super quick release needed from Kirk Cousins. This is just standard football. And those who are good at football usually end up doing well in these types of matchups. Justin Jefferson, very good at football. I would expect him to have a solid week this week. As far as the run blocking side, Minnesota 22nd and 20th, Indianapolis 6th and 11th in stopping the run. More of a fade Dalvin Cook week. He hasn't been very effective at all this entire season. I don't expect Minnesota necessarily to be, marching the ball up and down the field, given the particular matchup. I don't expect Indianapolis to be marching up and down the field either. I do like the under in this particular matchup, even though this is a home game for Minnesota. I don't expect a ton of points to be put up just based off of this. Again, a fade Dalvin Cook, I think he is benchable if you got two other solid options this week in your playoffs. He's basically been surviving with a few touchdowns here and there on some pretty low yardage totals. So if he doesn't score a touchdown in this particular matchup, maybe he's getting 7 or 8 points, and that's it. So just keep an eye on that. These teams do, pace up a little bit. There's some green there in the overall pace of play, but as I said, I don't expect the offenses to be particularly great in this matchup. So keep that in mind when you're setting your lineups, especially in the Saturday slate stuff for DFS. Getting into the number 2 game on the slate for the Saturday slate, we have Miami going into Buffalo. Buffalo 7-point home favorites, 25.25 team implied total. Miami 18.25 team implied total. Vegas game total overall 43.5. Pretty low there, but they are the second best matchup in the Saturday slate for Vegas game total. Miami's offense, number 14 and 17 in the offensive pass protection categories. Buffalo 13 and 3. This is kind of one of those studs eat matchups, very close. Those who are good at football will do well. Certainly seems like Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill are very good at football. And I think that's going to end up being how they move the ball on Buffalo. Doesn't look like weather will be a factor. It's supposed to be clear. 10-mile-an-hour winds. I wouldn't expect anything too crazy there in Buffalo, which is good. I think the offenses won't be affected by the weather. Maybe a little bit of coldness, but nothing too crazy like you'd expect sometimes in Buffalo. Getting into the run blocking for Miami, number 13 and number 3 in the run blocking categories, not too bad, but Buffalo 3rd and 5th. It's kind of an advantage there for Buffalo's defense. I wouldn't expect Miami to run the ball particularly well against Buffalo in this, and they're going to have to move the ball via the air. Tua certainly in play as far as DFS. Like if we're avoiding that top game there, which was Minnesota and who are they playing? Minnesota and Indy. We're not going to play the quarterbacks there. I think Tua is not a bad option here. He could find himself with a pretty solid game against Buffalo with weather not being in effect here. Stack him with Tyreek and Waddle and watch your team go. On the Buffalo offensive side, number 8, number 15 in the pass protection categories. Miami 16 and 8. There's kind of an advantage there for Buffalo's offensive line. They'll have some time to pass, but not an extraordinary game in that regards. Usually when this has happened, we've seen Gabe Davis have his bigger games where they can get a little bit deeper downfield and throw the ball. Doesn't look like weather will be impacting that necessarily. So Gabe Davis, Stephon Diggs, I think they'll be the biggest beneficiaries of this particular matchup. Getting into the run blocking side, number 20 and number 5 for Buffalo. Miami 4th and 17. As far as the overall just run stopping and run blocking, it's a big favor of Miami's defense. I wouldn't expect Buffalo to be very effective running the ball. You can fade Cook, you can fade Singletary. I don't think they're going to have very good games here. And it's not looking like they're going to have to dump the ball off as far as getting pressure on the offensive line. So again, I think this is going to be more of a Diggs and Gabe Davis type week. I don't know about those ancillary weapons like McKenzie, those guys, Knox. I'm not sure if they'll be necessarily in play, but if I'm going to play it, it's going to be Buffalo pass game. It's going to be Miami pass game, and that's kind of how that game is going to go, I think. Buffalo does pace up. Miami, middle of the pack there in general, but when they're leading or in their neutral situations, they are top 10. So I do like this game as far as the 3-game slate of being the one that actually, is the highest scoring of the particular week. I believe Buffalo there is probably number one with a 25.25. No, Minnesota's the highest team implied total. Buffalo second there. I do like both chances of Miami and Buffalo outscoring Minnesota in their individual matchup. Getting into the third game on the slate, we have Baltimore at Cleveland. Cleveland 2.5-point home favorites there. 38.5-point Vegas game total, which gets Cleveland at 20.5. Team implied total, Baltimore at 18. Doesn't sound like Lamar's going to play, but we should have Huntley. On that note, offensive pass protection for Baltimore, number 21 and 2. Cleveland 17 and 30. Not a great matchup there. It's just kind of stone against stone there. Pretty close, 21 and 17. As far as run blocking is concerned, Baltimore 21 and 8, Cleveland 30 and 27. That's a little bit better for Baltimore. I think they'll be able to run the ball a little bit better. And to me, this suggests it's going to be more of a Dobbins week. Grind it out on the ground. Dobbins should get some run. We should see all the running backs really there. I think be a little bit more effective than we're used to. Gus Edwards. Which one gets into the end zone when they get down there? That remains to be seen. Maybe it's Andrews. I just don't think Baltimore is going to necessarily struggle all that much moving the ball. They should be able to grind out, long drives here, especially with some efficiency there on the ground against this Cleveland team. Dobbins is a home run hitter in the backfield, and I think he's the biggest beneficiary of both these matchups. As far as them getting down to the end zone, they might stall out. Who knows? But if they don't, Andrews is always a threat for some red zone looks there once they get down in that area. Cleveland, offensive pass protection side, number 12 and number 8. Baltimore, number 6 and number 7 at stopping the run, at getting after the quarterback. I don't think Cleveland's going to have like a massive amount of time here. It's not a terrible matchup for them, but I think Watson will get a little bit extra pressure. He's going to need to get the ball out a little bit quicker on that end. And for me, that's going to tend to lean towards, a Amari Cooper type week, maybe some dump offs to the running backs. So you should see Chubb and Hunt maybe with a few more targets and Njoku with a few more targets. I think that's where that's going to lead. And getting into the run blocking side, Cleveland actually now 16 and 14 in the run blocking side, so they're middle of the pack. Baltimore 8 and 9 at stopping the run. To me, this is suggesting Cleveland's going to kind of struggle moving the ball. They're not going to be very effective running the ball. Chubb's certainly talented enough to rip one off, but this isn't suggesting that he's going to have a ton of success every single carry. They're going to be a little bit under pressure as far as Deshaun Watson's concerned. So for me, I think Baltimore looks like the better end on the offense. Cleveland looks like they're going to struggle a little bit on offense. Doesn't look like weather's necessarily going to be a concern either in Cleveland. And there you go. You heard it. Purge siren. I think Baltimore upsets Cleveland in this particular matchup. I think they're going to be able to move the ball a little bit more effectively. Cleveland's going to struggle a little bit more. And I just think Baltimore can overcome Cleveland because of this matchup. So keep that in mind. If you're still in a pick'em league or anything like that and you're down to these two squads or doing any sort of weekly pick'ems, I would say Baltimore upsetting Cleveland there in Cleveland could be the case. As far as pace is concerned, it's pretty low. It's a low Vegas game total. I expect this game to be, a lower scoring game. Just in general, I think Baltimore can pull it out, though. I think they got a little bit better matchups here. And that'll do it for the Saturday slate, folks. We're going to get into the Sunday game right away. Go from top down. Number one scoring game on the slate is Kansas City at Houston. Kansas City actually 14.5-point road favorites over Houston. Kansas City 32 team implied total. Houston 17.5 team implied total for a 49.5 overall Vegas game total. Just a thing to keep in mind, it sounds crazy, but typically 10-point or more home underdogs, which Houston is here, 14.5-point dogs at home, they cover almost 90% of the time when a home underdog is 10 points or worse. Underdogs They cover that spread almost 90% of the time. It seems almost impossible that Houston would be able to do this, especially looking into some of this adjusted line play report. Just keep that in mind. It is crazy where this home underdog thing, if they're 10-point or more underdogs, they cover that spread almost 90% of the time. It doesn't seem like it'd be possible in this particular matchup. Just keep it in mind. This could be closer than what this is suggesting as far as betting this game. We'll get into that. Kansas City offensive pass protection number 4 and number 11. Houston 19 and 27. Big favor there for Kansas City. They should have plenty of time to throw. They should be able to throw it to whoever they want, run whatever plays they want, and have time to do it. On the run blocking side, it's even better. Kansas City number 4 and number 1. Houston 27th and 21st in stopping the run. They're really bad. This could be really good for Pacheco and or McKinnon there in Kansas City, as you know, this is a big gap there, 4 to 27. I think this could be the Pacheco breakout week. Would not be surprised at all if he goes over 100 yards, scores twice in this particular matchup, just because Kansas City is blowing them out. Again, keep that little nugget of 90% of the time Houston, they could cover here. But it looks like a smash spot for Kansas City's offense. They should be able to move up and down the field on Houston. 32-point favorite, or 32-point team implied total. I think they can go over that easily in this particular matchup. So keep that in mind. I think Kansas City, they're just going to score at will. Should be wheels up for pretty much anybody that you have on the Kansas City side to get them into your lineups this week. On the Houston side, they're 18 and 32 in the offensive pass protection categories. Kansas City 5th and 20th. Kansas City should be able to get after Houston. Kansas City should be able to put up a ton of points. Kansas City's defense is also in play here because of this. It looks like a smash spot for their defense at getting after the quarterback, and the quarterback should be in passing situations a lot in this particular matchup. Again, 32-point favor, 32-point team implied total from Kansas City. They may score one on defense as well. I think they're just going to put up a massive amount of points here. Getting into the run blocking side, and this is where they can maybe keep it close and cover that 14.5-point line. I'm not saying Houston will upset them, but to keep it within 10 to 13 points, that might be possible in the run game. Houston pretty bad there, 30th and 31st in the run blocking side, but Kansas City 24th and 19th. We've seen Houston really emphasize running the ball, even in these bad situations, scenarios. They're down 14. They still like to run it. We saw it last week with Houston. They, took Dallas down to the wire. Dallas scored with like 40 seconds left to win that game. They were down before that. That seemed almost impossible, right? Dallas, I think they were going into Houston, or either way, Houston covered whatever that spread was for sure last week. And this is going to be the same, script. If it's going to stay close, it's going to be a lot of Pierce getting those dump offs because Houston's under pressure, and running the ball fairly effectively because Houston should have a little bit easier time of that than they're used to with this Kansas City rush defense. So Dameon Pierce, I think, certainly in play in this particular matchup if he's getting a lot of dump offs and being able to run the ball effectively. It sounds like Brandon Cooks should be back in this matchup as well, which only helps Houston sustain drives a little bit easier. On that note, let's get to the number 2 game on the slate. Philadelphia at Chicago, which is right below here. We have Philadelphia going into Chicago, another road favorite here by a massive amount. 9 points. Philadelphia 9-point road favorites. 28.75 team implied total. That is the second highest after Kansas City as far as the team totals. Chicago 19.75 team implied total for a 48.5. Vegas game total overall, number 2 on the Sunday main slate. Philly's offensive pass protection, number 23, and then number 1 in offensive pass DVOA, so very effective when they do throw the ball, but their offensive pass protection isn't that great. Luckily for them, Chicago 30th and 29 at getting after the quarterback. I think Philadelphia will have time to throw the ball a lot more than what they're used to. I think this is good for A.J. Brown. It's definitely good for Devonta Smith. I think they could have solid games here. Getting into the run blocking side, this is juicy. Number 6 and number 2 for Philadelphia, number 23 and number 32 for Chicago. This is kind of screaming that Miles Sanders is going to be a slate breaker. We did predict that last week. Miles Sanders slate breaker. I got him into my lineup last week, and of course we 3x'd on our return on investment last week, mainly because we had a lot of Miles Sanders in the lineups there. So keep that in mind. It looks like he should smash again in this. The only caveat to that is Chicago's pass defense is so bad that they should be able to pass the ball pretty effectively, which I think limits Miles Sanders' upside in this particular matchup. If this Chicago defense was a little bit better at passing the ball, I would expect a Miles Sanders breakout game here. I don't think Miles Sanders will be terrible in this. I just don't know if his ceiling will be there, as the pass game looks like it'll be effective, and I don't know if the touchdown variance goes in Sanders' way this week. As far as the Chicago side, Chicago number 32 in offensive pass protection, number 9 in the pass DVOA category. Philly number 2 in the defensive pass rush, 24 in the pass DVOA. So big matchup discrepancy there. Philadelphia defense number 2, Chicago number 32 offensive pass protection. They should be able to get after Justin Fields there very easily. Expect plenty of pressure there. Can he avoid it? Sure. Could there be a lot of sacks? Absolutely. Sack fumbles, strip sacks, whatever you want to call it. I think those are certainly in play. Philadelphia's defense could be a smash in this particular matchup. Run blocking though for Chicago, number 10 and number 18. Philadelphia 22 and number 3 is stopping the run. Pretty big favor there for Chicago running the ball. Philadelphia, though, getting Jordan Davis back, he makes a huge difference in the run game. They're not good at all with him out of the lineup. With him back in, they probably top 5 unit. I wouldn't expect Chicago to run the ball very effectively in this, so it's more of a fave for Montgomery. It looks like a smash matchup on paper, but I think with Jordan Davis there, Philadelphia will be a little bit better. If Chicago is going to move the ball at all, it's going to be via Justin Fields' arm and leg, and he's pretty much the only guy in Chicago that I think I trust this week to get any sort of fantasy point production. Could be a Komet type week too if they're dumping it off. Getting into the number 3 game on the slate, we have Dallas going to Jacksonville. Dallas, again, another road favorite. 26 team implied total for Dallas. Jacksonville 22 team implied total. Doing the math there, it's a 4-point road favorite for Dallas. 48 points overall for the Vegas game total. Dallas offensive pass protection number 3 and number 4. Jacksonville 31st in the defensive pass rush and 16th in defensive pass DVOA. Massive favor for Dallas's offensive line here and the pass protection. We'll get into it in just a sec. Getting into the offensive run blocking side, number 7 for Dallas, number 10 for Jacksonville. It's stopping it. DVOA, Dallas 12, Jacksonville 23. It's kind of a stalemate there on the offensive run blocking side. I think this favors more so Pollard than Zeke. I don't think Zeke will have a very good week. Never mind the Dr. Seuss rhyming there. I think this is going to be a down week for Zeke, more so a Pollard week. Looking at the offensive pass protection, I think this is going to be an excellent week for just the Dallas pass game in general. I think CeeDee Lamb's going to be good. I think Gallup will be good. Certainly Schultz in play. I think this is more of a Pollard week. I think he's the better of the 2 running backs. Looking at the run blocking side, Dallas wants to, run the ball. I think Pollard would be more effective there. And then if they got plenty of time, the pass protection side, Pollard does run routes, like decent routes out there. And I could see him, getting one of these where he gets open and they have, plenty of time for him to get out of the backfield and down, the seam or, down the sideline to catch, a 30, 40-yard touchdown, something like that, where a lot of that is air yards and not necessarily a dump off. I think that is in play. You're going to want those type of maneuvers on the Dallas pass protection side. And then looking at Prescott, I think he's certainly in play as far as a stacking partner, getting in those offensive weapons of his in the pass game. Gallup, Lamb, Schultz, Pollard. You name it. I think those 4 are going to be solid options this week against this Dallas team, and I think Dallas is going to move against the Jacksonville team. Dallas is going to move the ball pretty well in the air, and I do like Dak this week as far as maybe being this type of a slate breaker on this main slate on Sunday. I think he's in a smash spot, but we got some other good spots there with Jalen Hurts and Mahomes, so keep an eye on that. I just think Dak, he's going to be cheaper, and he's going to put up equal amount of points, or be pretty good in that aspect. I don't think he's going to get buried by those two. As far as Jacksonville is concerned, number 6 in offensive pass protection, 22 in the pass DVOA. Dallas number 1 and number 6. They should be able to get after Jacksonville here. Jacksonville probably have a little less time than they're used to throw the ball. It's not going to be good for them moving the ball. Necessarily. So watch out for that. Probably more of a Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram type week where those are the guys that are maybe getting open a little bit easier to get the ball out a little bit quicker. I don't see it being very good for Jacksonville's offense there in the pass protection side, which is unfortunate because the run blocking is even worse. Number 31 and 15 for Jacksonville on the offensive run blocking side. Dallas 11 and 1 at stopping the run. This is completely fade Etienne. I said do that last week. He had a terrible week last week. And this is going to be more of the same unless he's catching some dump off passes, but it doesn't look like he necessarily gets involved in the pass game either. So pretty much a fade. I think Jacksonville's offense is going to struggle in this. I think Dallas will just absolutely obliterate Jacksonville here at Jacksonville. So keep that in mind. I think Dallas pulls out early. I think they'll kind of keep their foot on the gas. Jacksonville, I think, will struggle on offense against this defense in general. So that's how I think that's going to go. Let's get into the number 4 game on the slate. Tennessee at the Chargers. We have Tennessee going into Los Angeles, 3-point road underdogs. The Chargers favored by 3 at home, 24.75 team implied total for the Chargers. Tennessee at 21.75. The Chargers, I believe, are 4th in terms of team implied total on the slate, so keep that in mind. A 46.5 Vegas game total overall, again 4th on the main slate. Tennessee offensive pass protection number 29 and 20. Not very good, fortunately for them. Chargers 20th and 25th in the pass rush categories. Tennessee may find a little bit extra time compared to what they're used to, but it's still not a good matchup for them. I don't think this favors necessarily anyone. Maybe getting the ball out a little bit quicker to Henry and some of the underneath routes, maybe Chig Okwonkwo. He could be in there, Chigoziem Okwonkwo, Chigoziem. I'm not sure how you pronounce his first name. But, those would be the biggest beneficiaries of that matchup. Getting into the run blocking side, Tennessee number 15 and 23, the Chargers 28th and 24. I expect Tennessee to be able to run all over the Chargers. That's exactly what they like to do. That's what they want to do. This is a Derrick Henry smash spot. Get him into your lineups. Do I want to do a slate breaker for Derrick Henry? Absolutely. I think he is in a good spot here. Wouldn't be surprised to see him go over, 130, 140 on the ground, score a touchdown or two. Keep that in mind. Chargers side, offensive pass protection number 9 and 29. Tennessee 23rd and 1st. Don't expect the Chargers to be super explosive based off of this, but they should have plenty of time to throw the ball. It's going to be good for Mike Williams. It's going to be good for Keenan Allen. That's going to be good for Palmer. That's going to be good for Everett. It's going to be good for Justin Herbert. Expect him to have a massive week. Again, do we want to do a combo breaker? Maybe. Let's just everybody's slate breaker this week, right? I think he's going to be very, very good. The stacks with him are going to be very effective this week. I'm not entirely sure how popular he's going to be either, considering we have that Kansas City game. We have Jalen Hurts. It looks like Dak Prescott's in a smash spot with Dallas. I don't expect that one to be super popular either. We have Cincinnati in the Tampa Bay game. We could see a lot of Joe Burrow coverage here. So I don't know how popular Herbert's actually going to be in this particular matchup. Keep that in mind. Should be kind of interesting to see the roster percentage is this week on that. The run blocking for the Chargers, not very good, 27th and 19th. Tennessee, number 1 at stopping the run, and 14th in run DVOA. Don't expect the Chargers to run the ball at all. It's going to be the Chargers pass game. Again, Eckler's involved in the pass game as well, so wheels up. If you want to get a little bit different as far as stacking, Williams, Mike Williams coming back. I don't think he's going to be very popular. Mike Williams and Eckler with your stacking partners there with Herbert, I think could be very effective in a tournament. Maybe win quite a bit of money there. So keep that in mind when you're setting your main slate lineups. It's a very interesting game. I think Tennessee wants to run the ball. They'll be effective. Chargers want to pass the ball. They'll be very effective doing that. So it should be a very interesting game there. Another Sunday late game here, number 5 on the slate, Cincinnati at Tampa Bay. Getting into that one, Cincinnati 3.5-point road favorites, 24.25 team implied total. Good for fifth best team implied total on the slate. Tampa Bay 20.75 at home as 3.5-point underdogs. 45 Vegas game total overall. Good for 5th on the main slate out of 10. Cincinnati, number 20 and number 3 in the offensive pass protection categories. Tampa Bay, number 4 and number 12 in the pass rush. I do expect Tampa Bay to be able to get after Cincinnati. Cincinnati likely to need a little bit quicker passes. It's going to be good. I don't know if Boyd's going to play. He's got the weird finger issue. I don't think T. Higgins plays with his hamstring, which means Jamar Chase is going to be the biggest beneficiary of those absences. And I think this is going to be more of a P. Ryan and Mixon dump-off week where we might see both of those guys, pushing 4 or 5 receptions in this particular matchup. Similar to what we've seen out of Tampa Bay's running back squad the last few weeks. I think Cincinnati may be in a similar spot. Getting into the run blocking side, they're number 11 and number 4. Tampa Bay matching them, number 12 and number 12. And it looks like, those who are good at football should be, good there. It looks like the better matchup of the two for Cincinnati's air versus run. I think the run game's a little bit more effective. Again, I think this is more of a P. Ryan Mixon week. If those 2 wide receivers are out, I would expect Chase. Obviously, he's going to get a massive target share, so he could be a big beneficiary. If those guys are out, it just doesn't look like this matchup's super great. With that being the case, he's got to get the volume. He's certainly talented. He can take one underneath to the house. Just keep that in mind. It's going to be those 3, I think, on offense for Cincinnati. If T. Higgins plays or Boyd plays, Boyd would be very intriguing to me with this matchup. He's more the beneficiary of some underneath quicker passes, and I would like him maybe in a dart throw type of DFS tournament. If he makes it in there, I think you could see 8 or 9 targets with him in there, and he's not going to be very highly rostered, probably sub 1%, maybe sub 2% at worst. On the Tampa Bay offensive side, number 1 and number 30 in the pass protection categories. Again, not very explosive, but they don't get sacked. They don't get like a ton of pressure. Cincinnati, number 29 and 13 in the pass rush categories. Big favor for Tampa Bay. They should have plenty of time to throw the ball. We've seen this all throughout the year. Tampa Bay been very good in this category, but not produced results. It's probably the same thing again this week. I don't know. Who's going to catch the passes? They're not very good on offense for whatever reason this year. It's really hurt Godwin. It's hurt Evans. Mike Evans probably the most in this particular season. I foresee more struggles here, despite the matchup looking very good. I just don't know how effective they're going to be moving the ball. I got burned the first 8 weeks of the season because Tampa Bay, hey, this is a good matchup. They're playing somebody really bad on defense. They should have all this time to throw. And then, Tom Brady's sitting there with 22 attempts, or 22 completions on 25 attempts, third quarter, and he's got no yards, like 120 yards. And you're like, what the heck? They're obviously completing a lot of passes. They just don't move the ball. It's kind of weird. As far as the run blocking side, Tampa Bay 23 and 17, Cincinnati 17 and 10 at stopping it. A little bit favor there of the Cincinnati defense in terms of stopping the run. I don't expect Tampa Bay to be able to run the ball very effectively. Again, I think they're going to have to pass the ball to move the ball, and Cincinnati looks like it's going to be the opposite, where they're going to run the ball a little bit more effectively than they pass it. Tampa Bay plays pretty fast. Cincinnati not so much, more middle of the pack to slow. Wouldn't expect this to be a big scoring game, but you can get some pieces probably in your DFS lineups. The ones that you're starting in the season-long leagues, I'd be a little bit nervous for Tampa Bay, but you can start those Cincinnati players, mix in P. Ryan probably if there's some wide receivers out, or if Boyd's in there, I think you can start him. He's a good dart throw in DFS for sure. Getting into the number 6 game on the slate, it's actually New England and Las Vegas, kind of a revenge game here for the coaches. New England, number 24, let's get in. Las Vegas actually 1.5-point home favorites over New England there. 23 team implied total for Vegas. New England, 21.5 team implied total, for a Vegas game total of 44.5 overall. Again, 6 out of 10 on the slate for the main slate. New England, number 24 and 24 in the offensive pass protection categories. Fortunately for them, Las Vegas, 27 and 18 in the defensive pass rush categories. They should have plenty of time to throw, considering the run blocking side isn't super great for New England, 19 and 25 versus Vegas, 13 and 30. And some injuries there in New England's backfield. I expect New England to pass the ball to be a little bit more effective. They should be effective in doing that. I don't mind Hunter Henry. I don't mind even Jonnu Smith if you're in some deep leagues as tight end premium type thing. Just monitor what wide receivers will be active for New England. If you get Jacoby Myers in there, he should be in a good spot to perform well. If he's not in there, Hunter Henry should be very effective in this. In DFS, you could probably go that route as far as getting in your tight end and getting away from Chalk. He's going to be severely under-rostered in tournaments. I don't like the run blocking here for New England. Just keep that in mind. Despite whoever starts there, I don't think it's in a smash spot for them. On the Las Vegas offensive side, number 7 and number 5 in the offensive pass protection category is pretty good. Unfortunately for them, New England also pretty good at number 3 and number 10. Kind of a stalemate there. Maybe a little bit of a favor of New England. Don't expect them to have a ton of time to pass the ball. Typically in these, we call them like studs eat. Those who are good at football should produce, as there's like a stalemate. Devontae Adams certainly very good at football. I believe we should be getting Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow in this particular matchup. So Carr will have a few extra weapons, which bodes well for them. But more of an Adams week. I don't think those other two coming back from the injuries and this particular matchup will be super effective. On the run blocking side, it's a little bit more interesting. Las Vegas, number 1 and number 10. New England, number 16 and number 4. Vegas should be able to run the ball. Again, this is screaming Jacobs and Adams, as it's been pretty much for the last 8 weeks. And we've seen those guys smash pretty much most weeks out of the last 8. Another one of those type of games. Keep that in mind. That's about it for that game. Getting into the number 7 game on the slate, we actually have 2 of them, Atlanta at New Orleans and then Detroit at the Jets. Let's get into the NFC South game here first. New Orleans 4-point home favorites, 23.75 team implied total. Atlanta 19.75 team implied total, for a Vegas game total of 43.5 overall, which is tied for 7th best on the slate with that Detroit Jets game. Getting into the offensive pass protection category for Atlanta, number 27 and 6th. New Orleans, number 8 and 21st. Atlanta explosive, but they give up a lot of pressure. That's kind of what this is saying. New Orleans, very good at getting after the quarterback, but they do give up some explosive plays. We do have a rookie quarterback in Desmond Ridder coming in. We'll see how that kind of plays out for Atlanta in this. It's not looking good for him in terms of having time to throw the ball. We expect him to be under pressure. He is mobile, so I think that bodes well as far as him getting flushed out of the pocket. Not necessarily for his pass catchers, but maybe for him, getting an additional few scrambles, which get him some more rush yards. So if you're scrambling at quarterback in a super deep league, I don't know if this is, that terrible of an option as far as him getting some rush yards. He might give you a nice 4 to 6 point floor there with rush yards. In terms of run blocking, though, Atlanta number 3 and 13, New Orleans 20th and 13. Big favor there for Atlanta. I expect them to run the ball pretty effectively against New Orleans. And, with the rookie quarterback in there, Atlanta doesn't like to pass the ball anyway. I would expect Atlanta to try to run the ball and be pretty effective there. So Tyler Algier, Cordero Patterson, I think are certainly in play in DFS as dart throws. I think he could do worse in this particular slate. On the New Orleans offensive side, number 15 and number 18 in the pass protection categories, middle of the pack, but fortunately for them, Atlanta number 32 and 28 in the defensive pass rush categories. New Orleans should have plenty of time to throw the ball, which is good for Andy Dalton and the pass catchers there in New Orleans. And the run blocking side is pretty much the same, number 14 and 22 in the run blocking. So again, middle of the pack there. Atlanta number 31 and 29. Really bad. New Orleans should be able to move the ball up and down the field at will on Atlanta, which is good for Kamara as well as Olave. I think both of those two could have monster weeks. Andy Dalton, certainly a dart throw quarterback this week. If you think they're going to go that route, maybe you could have an Olave and Kamara stack and hope that, hey, we got 2 touchdowns from Olave that came from Andy Dalton, 1 dump off to Alvin Kamara, and Alvin Kamara runs one in. New Orleans scores 4 touchdowns, and you account for all of them with your DFS lineup. And they're going to be super cheap and highly under-rostered. But I kind of see that's how the game's going to go. New Orleans offense should be very good. Atlanta, they'll be solid running the ball, and that's kind of what they want to do. Algier and Patterson, more of the beneficiaries there. And yeah, I think that's it for that particular game. Getting into the Detroit Jets game here. They are an early game on the Sunday slate. This Vegas line's been going back and forth. Last night, it was 1.5 point favorites for Detroit. This morning, it's 1 point, and this is Saturday morning, 1 point favorites for the Jets now with Zach Wilson in there, which is tough to believe. I don't think the Jets are going to be any good with him in there. But anyway, they are 1 point favorites as of Saturday morning, according to Vegas. 22.25 team implied total for the Jets, 21.25 team implied total for Detroit, 43.5 Vegas game total overall. Again, that's tied for 7th out of 10 on the slate this week. On the Detroit side, number 2 and number 10 in offensive pass protection, pretty good, if not very good. Unfortunately for them, the Jets 7th and 9th in the defensive pass rush categories. They should be able to get some sort of pressure. Detroit maybe not having as much time as they're used to throw the ball. It's going to be a little bit better for Amon-Ra St. Brown. You may see Brock Wright with a few more targets. But getting more of those underneath routes. I think Chark also benefits from this. I think he sees some of these, bubble screens and stuff to him and some of these deep shots. Jameson Williams, I don't expect him necessarily to be highly targeted in this unless it's going to be some of these bubble screen type things. And I think the Khalif Raymonds and Josh Reynolds of the world, I don't think they're going to have very good games. I think this is more of a Chark, Amon-Ra St. Brown type week where they're going to get some of those targets underneath. On the run blocking side, Detroit number 8 and 9, pretty good. Unfortunately for them, the Jets number 7 and number 7 at stopping the run. Again, pretty evenly matched there. Those who are good at football should do well. I think Swift is certainly good at football. He doesn't get a ton of volume, but I think this is more of a week for him where he's getting some dump-offs and, he's the more effective runner out of the backfield in this Detroit backfield. Keep that in mind. So I think it's going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown, Chark, Swift, and maybe some extra targets to Brock Wright. It's not going to be very, it's not going to look good on paper. I think they'll see the targets. It's just they're not going to sustain drives. They're not going to be very effective in that end as far as getting up and down the field like they're used to. On the Jets side, they're number 13 and 12 in the offensive pass protection categories. A little bit above average there in terms of NFL. But Detroit numbers 26 and 22 in the defensive pass rush categories. Jets should have plenty of time to throw the ball, but Mike White is injured. He won't be in there. Will be Zach Wilson. Bleeding eyes type of football. Really, I think with him in there, the only viable play in the Jets pass game is now Garrett Wilson. I don't think Zach Wilson can support much more than that, but he should have, time to throw the ball. Detroit's secondary is not very good, and I don't think the Jets can run the ball very effectively. So we'll see how this ends up going. I think it's really just good for Garrett Wilson, and that's pretty much it. We haven't seen Zach Wilson, dump the ball off to the running backs. Really, that's not his style of play at the quarterback position. So I think Bam Knight is kind of off lists. I don't think you can put Michael Carter in there either. Looking at the run blocking, it's not very good. Jets 25 and 24, Detroit 18 and 28, stopping the run. Again, I don't think Bam Knight's going to have a very good game here. He's more of a fade for me this particular week. It's really the Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra St. Brown show for me if I'm picking anything from this particular matchup. You can start Chark, you can start Swift. I just wouldn't expect a ton out of their ceiling anyway in this game. Getting into the number 9 game on the slate, we're going to have Pittsburgh and Carolina, which is maybe a little bit juicier of a matchup based off of this. We have Carolina 3-point home favorites over Pittsburgh with a 20.25 team implied total for Carolina, 17.25 for Pittsburgh. Again, Carolina 3-point home favorites there, and a 37.5 Vegas game total, which is actually not the worst on the slate, if you can believe that. 9th out of 10. Pittsburgh, number 16 and 16 in the offensive pass protection categories. Carolina 25th and 19 at getting after the quarterback. That's favor for Pittsburgh. They should have a little bit more time than they're particularly used to on any given game. I think this is going to be a little bit better for George Pickens. The only problem is we might not have the rookie in there, Kenny Pickett. It might be Mitch Trubisky, and we've really seen Pittsburgh offense struggle with Trubisky in there. And typically when Trubisky's in there, it's not good for George Pickens. It's been better for Deontay Johnson and the tight end there, Pat Freiermuth. I would expect that to continue if it's Trubisky. Maybe they struggle a little bit more moving the ball in the air. On the run blocking side, it's pretty even there. 12 and 21 for Pittsburgh's offense. Carolina 15 and 20. We should see Najee Harris be somewhat effective in this particular matchup. Good, not great, but yeah, him and Warren will be the ones that will be running the rock. On this, I don't see Pittsburgh, being terribly bad on offense, especially if we can get Pickett in there. I think they can move the ball a little bit better and get some time there to throw the ball to Pickens. Just keep that in mind. Shouldn't be that bad for Pittsburgh. On the Carolina side, they're number 19 and 13 in the offensive pass protection categories. Pittsburgh 24 and 11. This does on paper look a little bit better for Carolina. Like maybe they'll have a little bit of time to throw the ball. We're pretty even there, but with TJ Watt back, I think Pittsburgh's been a lot better at getting after the quarterback. I would expect there to be some pressure on Carolina, and they're needing to get the ball out a little bit quicker. That's going to be better for the tight ends and Chuba Hubbard there. And getting into the run blocking side, it's number 5 and 28 for Carolina, so they're very good at run blocking. They're not very explosive. On that end, Pittsburgh a little bit below average at 19 and 18, so pretty big favor there for Carolina's run blocking unit. They don't want Darnold to throw the ball. I would expect, maybe Pittsburgh if they're struggling a little bit. I think Carolina, you can have Foreman and Chuba Hubbard both over, 15, 17 carries in this particular matchup. And this maybe is suggesting that, a Hubbard, if he's getting a few more dump offs there, would be the beneficiary if you're in a PPR league for this particular matchup. I think they can hit the over in this particular game, the Pittsburgh and Carolina squads, especially if Pickett's in there. I would expect this to go over because I think Pittsburgh can move the ball. I think they can score 20, 21 points in this. Carolina side, I think they can run the ball and be somewhat effective, 17, 20 points in this. It'll be close, but I do like the over in this. Both teams getting close to 40 Vegas game total. I don't mind that in this based off the matchups. And getting into the grossest game on the slate, Arizona at Denver, apparently. 36.5 team implied total. This is absolutely atrocious. Worst on the slate, obviously. We have Denver actually 1.5 point home favorites over the Cardinals. Denver 19-point team implied total. Cardinals 17.5 team implied total. Getting into Arizona offense, 17 and 27 in the offensive pass DVOA. Denver 14 and 17 at getting after the quarterback. That's pretty even there. That's more of a studs eat. I think we'll be fine with Hopkins. I think we'll be fine with Marquise Brown. Getting in the run blocking side, number 24 and 27 for Arizona, pretty bad. Denver, fortunately for them, is number 26 in stopping the run, number 6 in run DVOA, so they don't give up a lot of explosive plays. But again, I think this is going to be a little bit of a bonus for Connor. I think, he's not particularly great at football, but this is a matchup where he's not going to be getting his doors blown off. So Hopkins, I think, is the biggest beneficiary of this overall matchup. Colt McCoy certainly able to overcome something like this and get the ball out to his weapons. I think Connor should be effective. I think Brown maybe will be effective as well. And I don't think Arizona will be that terrible off. 17 team implied total, about what I would expect. On the Denver side, number 26 and 28 in the offensive pass protection category. Fortunately for them, Arizona 28 and 23 in the defensive pass rush categories. Pretty evenly matched there. The only problem, we're without Russell Wilson. We got Brett Ripien, I think, in there. Probably not going to be a great matchup. Not a great quarterback anyway there. Arizona maybe gets some turnovers with Ripien in there. He's been pretty atrocious. You could probably play Arizona defense. It sounds like Denver is going to be a very popular defense this week, and that'd be a good chalk pivot in tournaments, is to get onto that Arizona defensive side. Again, this is a pretty normal matchup. Judy and Dulcich pretty much going to be the only beneficiaries in this particular matchup. If they're getting the ball out a little bit quicker, they're more underneath players, so that's good for them. And it's not a terrible matchup. Denver, maybe has a little bit more time than they're used to throw the ball. They got another quarterback in there that maybe won't be super effective. On the run blocking side, it's very similar, pretty even. Both these teams, it's similar, across the board as far as being even on both sides of the ball. Denver 18 and 29 in the run blocking. Arizona 21 and 26. Again, pretty even. Denver's run game, those who are good at football will produce. I don't think Denver has anybody there in the backfield that's any good at football, so maybe they don't produce. Again, I think this is going to be close. Both teams may be able to move the ball. It's just a matter of whether or not Denver's quarterback that's new can kind of overcome some of the deficiencies there. Denver and Arizona do kind of pace up a little bit. Just keep that in mind. But it should be interesting. I think both of these teams' defenses are in play. Should be kind of interesting. Arizona maybe runs the ball a little bit more, and that's not going to give Denver the opportunity to, necessarily get after the quarterback and score a bunch of defensive points. If they're going to be popular in tournaments, you're going to want to pivot off of that into the Arizona side, where maybe Denver throws a little bit more in this particular matchup. Maybe they just want to keep it out. I don't know. It's going to be a gross game. Not attacking it in DFS. Let's just put it that way. That'll do it for the main slate. Let's get into the island games. We're going to have two of those, Sunday night and Monday night. Our Sunday night game is NFC East. New York Giants going into Washington. Washington 4.5-point home favorites there. 22.5 team implied total for Washington. New York Giants 18 team implied total for a disgusting Vegas game total of 40.5. Again, island game, you're going to be maybe doing these MVP type, things. Giants 31st in offensive pass protection, offensive pass DVOA number 14. Washington number 9 and 4 at getting after the passer. Washington defense, I think, is in play in this particular matchup for those island games. Getting into the run blocking side, the Giants 26th and 16th, Washington number 5 and number 8 at getting after the at stopping the run. I don't think Giants are going to be able to run the ball either. You're going to need to get somebody from the Giants side, and it's going to be somebody who's going to benefit from quicker passes, quicker dump offs. Look into that. I don't know who you want to necessarily grab, but Barkley's probably going to be popular, and if he's going to be super expensive and popular for the Giants players, maybe pivot off of that to give yourself a chance to get higher up on the board to avoid some of the chalkier plays for the Giants. I just think, hey, go look in there. If you find somebody that's going to be running a little bit quicker routes, they're probably going to be solid on that end for the Giants as far as getting targets. Getting in the Washington side, defense certainly in play in the island game. They're 22 and 25 in the pass protection categories. The Giants 21 and 31, pretty evenly matched there. That to me thinks the guys who are good at football will do well. That's more McLaurin for me. I could see Heineke getting the ball to him, in this particular matchup and being one of those guys that you're going to want on your island squad. In the run blocking side, actually, Washington number 17 and 26, the Giants 29 and 31. This is a small favor there for the Washington run game. Robinson and Gibson, I think, are both in play, especially if we think the Giants are going to be struggling moving the ball on offense and they're going to get tons of turnovers. I don't mind both Washington running backs getting the Washington defense in there with McLaurin and somebody on the Giants side to as a 5-1 type of lineup. I think that's how I would attack it there over on DraftKings. Getting into the Monday Night Football game, we have the Rams and Green Bay in Green Bay. Green Bay 7-point home favorites, 23.25 team implied total. Rams 16.25 team implied total, for an even worse Vegas game total than Sunday night at 39.5. The Rams number 30th in offensive pass protection, number 26 in the pass DVOA. Green Bay 22 and 32 in the pass rush categories. Rams not very good. They may have a little bit more time than they're used to in this to throw, but really, who are they throwing it to? Van Jefferson, Higbee, I don't know. It's gross. In an island game, those are probably pretty much your only two options in the pass game. Just keep that in mind. I do like the run blocking side better for the Rams. 28 and 30, if you can believe it, for the Rams. Run blocking is better. Only because Green Bay number 32 and 22 is stopping the run. I think this is more of an Akers week. If you think the Rams are going to be under pressure, you could do Kyren Williams if you think he's going to get a bunch of targets. But really, I think this is more, the Rams side. You're going to see Akers probably with the highest amount of fantasy points after the quarterback, or maybe even before the quarterback. I think that's who you're going to want from the Rams side. On Green Bay, I think you're going to want another 5-1. 5 Green Bay players with 1 Rams player, probably being Akers. Green Bay's offensive pass protection, number 5 and 7. The Rams, number 15 and 5 in the pass rush categories. Pretty decent favor there for Green Bay. They should have time to pass the ball. That's going to be good for their weapons. Maybe we see a Lazard come back this week, but really it's been the rookie over there who's been dominating. Christian Watson. He could have another touchdown or two in this particular matchup. If the Rams aren't scoring a lot of points and Green Bay is just kind of running the clock out, it's good for them in that category too. Number 2 and number 11 for Green Bay. Rams middle of the pack at 14 and 15. Green Bay should be able to run the ball very effectively as well. In this tone, I expect Green Bay to kind of run this from the very beginning and be very successful moving the ball. Long sustained drives ending in touchdowns, I think, is well within the realm of possibility here. I think Green Bay, both running backs would be in play, especially if they're going to get out to a quicker lead, maybe on a Christian Watson touchdown, and then they stop the Rams, go down long sustained drive and score another one. With one of the running backs, they're going to lean on that run game. Probably more in the favor of A.J. Dillon, especially if they're going to get up big and early in this. The pace is going to be super slow for both these teams, so the 39.5 team implied or game total makes sense. I just think the majority of that's going to come, from the Green Bay side, not necessarily the Rams side. Wouldn't be surprised to see this one end like 24-3, 24-7, something like that in terms of Green Bay covering that spread. I do like their chances. Anyway, folks, that's going to do it for this episode of the Adjusted Line Play Report from Zilla Fantasy Elite. This is week 15, Saturday morning. Hope you enjoyed it. Learn some extra stuff that you can put into your information tool belt for this week and determine which of those lineups is going to win you that Millie Maker or win you that tournament, put you in the cash game option to double your money. Anyway, I hope that's the case for you. Very successful here, 11 of 14 weeks. We're going to try to make it 12 of 15 in these tournaments this whole weekend. We'll see what we can do on the Saturday slate and the main slate there. Anyway, hit that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed and you made it this far. Leave a comment for me, what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy. And then head over to Twitter, follow at Toddzilla1337 and at Zilla Fantasy. And let's go win some money together, folks. Love ya. See ya. Bye. Have a wonderful holiday week.